Tonight on The Wrap, the pressure grows on the FIFA boss to be shown the red card. UEFA says it's lost confidence in Gianni Infantino and he needs to go. And now another major football body, CONCACAF, is calling for a full review of FIFA's leadership. Spain installs a 500-metre barrier in the sea off its African enclave of Ceuta in a bid to stop the chaos that saw more than 80 people die when tens of thousands tried to cross from Morocco. Andy Burnham heads back to Manchester to join the woman who has succeeded him as mayor after Bev Craig saw off a challenge from Reform. And in the sports, the new world record holder, Josh Kerr, wins Commonwealth gold in the mile in front of a passionate home crowd in Glasgow. We discuss today's biggest stories with the news editor at the Press Association, Theo Usherwood, and chief foreign correspondent at the Sunday Times, Christina Lamb. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers in half an hour. Hello there, a very good evening. There has been no real threat to his presidency of FIFA in the decade since he assumed the top job. But tonight, Gianni Infantino is under pressure like never before. Hot on the heels of the World Cup red card scandal, where he cancelled the suspension of a US striker at the behest of his friend Donald Trump, came an even bigger controversy. He's now had to abandon plans to sell off stakes in future World Cup profits, but his actions have resulted in UEFA calling today for him to step down or face a vote of no confidence. And CONCACAF, the football body representing North and Central America, has called for a full review of FIFA's leadership as it attacked what it called an egregious act of poor government. So, what do we make of this, Theo?
Well, it clearly is now the case that UEFA and others are looking to take this opportunity to get rid of Infantino. He's had to back down, but I think many are probably fearful within the game that actually he'll only try again if he's not actually put out of a job right away. Yeah, Christina, is it just a matter of time?
It's very hard to see how he can survive this. There's lots of comments of red cards and open goals.
Yes, well, we will discuss more in a moment. Sky sources understand European football leaders are tonight accelerating plans to force Infantino out, but it hasn't all been bad news. He has at least received the backing of the Qatari and Moroccan football federations. So, can he survive? Here's our sports correspondent, Rob Harris.
Total number of valid votes for Gianni Infantino, 115.
A presidency in peril, having been brought in to clean up FIFA.
The money of FIFA is your money. It's not the money of the FIFA president.
Now the rebellion against Gianni Infantino is intensifying, even after being forced to scrap plans to sell off the World Cup to private investors.
And I won't forget the men who died.
It's fast becoming a question of not whether the FIFA leader can cling on, but how soon he could be toppled. The European and North American football confederations declaring today they'd both lost confidence in his leadership. And Sky News has learnt UEFA leaders are accelerating moves to force Infantino out of FIFA. After more emergency talks, UEFA said, "We cannot keep going on like this with secret schemes on fast-track timescales cooked up by faceless individuals and of dubious benefit to the game. We must identify those responsible and hold them to account. UEFA will devise a plan to make sure it cannot occur again. That review should be thorough and fundamental. No option should be off the table." This man on the left, CONCACAF's president, Canadian Victor Montagliani, is tipped as a potential successor. And his organisation announced it will use FIFA procedures to take action. So will the Football Association. During the World Cup, this was their chair, Debbie Hewitt, presenting an England shirt, now calling for a full and robust review of FIFA's leadership and governance. What's provoked so much anger is how Infantino conceived the plans in secret to create a new venture for the money-making parts of FIFA and selling off 20% to private investors.
And if I can get the US jersey.
The $20 billion venture was called a bad deal for football by this man. Carlos Cordero, who was Infantino's senior advisor until we revealed yesterday he had quit in protest.
Thank you, Carlos.
With the politics creeping into the level and the height that it's gotten to now, to the extent that it's threatening to cripple him, bring him down, is quite unfortunate and sad to see. When I heard it, it took me 3 seconds to say that's an absolute no-no, without even hearing the details. The problem here is nobody was consulted, nobody knew these talks were going on, nobody knew of this plan. He just presented it.
The financing was planned with Joshua Kushner, the brother of Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, deepening concerns about cronyism and Infantino cozying up to Trump. It's leaving fans troubled about whether FIFA can ever clean up its act.
Well, I think they're going to go, aren't they?
I think it's a great idea to try and get them to step out of it, because it's just taking away the football from the fans.
He has succeeded in spreading money around international football, lots more countries involved and stuff. I mean, football is a business, it's a huge industry.
It's all that greed and money, nothing about football at all. Nothing about football.
It absolutely shows that he's not interested in football or the good of football. He's interested in lining his own pockets.
It's 11 years since Sepp Blatter quit FIFA in disgrace.
Here we go, Sepp.
Now, 2 weeks after feeling at the peak of his powers, handing out the World Cup, Gianni Infantino faces being brought down by his hubris. The football world is now asking, will he resign or have to be forced out? Rob Harris, Sky News.
Well, let's get the thoughts of Theo and Christina. Rob, ending on that thought there, Christina, will he resign or face a vote of no confidence? Where's this going to go, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he's not the kind of person that looks like he's going to resign, I think. But particularly as I gather, he gets about $5 million a year with bonuses. But it's very difficult to see how he can survive this. And the kind of blistering criticism from UEFA, but also from some of his own people who have quit at FIFA. And the way it was all done, the secrecy and this sort of Trumpification of FIFA and the World Cup. Although I see even Trump seems to be distancing himself now.
Yes, sort of saying he didn't know anything about it. I mean, I think that is one of the big problems, isn't it? That there was no transparency and even senior people didn't know about this plan.
Yeah, they say they had no idea whatsoever. And we apparently only know because it was leaked, broken by the Times and the Financial Times. So what he was thinking, I mean, if that hadn't happened, how he was somehow going to try and do this. And the way that he tried to force countries, I mean, giving them this deadline of I think it was the 19th of September, and that they would get 40 million if they agreed straight away, but if they didn't, they'd only get 15 million. And it's just an astonishing way to behave.
It really is astonishing.
And of course, following, the scandal over the red card for Balogun being withdrawn after Trump asked him at the World Cup, it just really, how can you run an organisation like that?
Yeah, I mean, Theo, what are your thoughts on this? It's been a remarkable week, really, for Infantino. Things have moved so quickly. Yeah. At the beginning of the week, he was, pretty secure in his job. At the end of the week, he's pretty much on his way out.
Yes, and the point I just made a few moments ago, I think it's clearly a view that actually, especially within UEFA, that they don't want to just do this repeat in 2 or 3 years' time. I think from, if you think back to the beginning of the week when this first emerged, he had there was no sense that he was going to back down on it. There was no immediate, swatting away of the idea, and it's just a fairy tale. And he pressed ahead with it. And at one point, we were breaking stories about, the fact that England and other European nations simply weren't going to take part in the World Cup. I mean, the World Cup, the Football World Cup, is on a par or second only to the Olympics, which I think it would be extraordinary if we lost that competition. And I think, the way he's behaved undermines the integrity of the world's, most popular game. Yeah. That would be, that would have been disastrous if we'd had a World Cup and no European nations had been taking part, which would, of course, included the whole of Spain. It's
interesting listening to football fans in Rob's piece, isn't it? Because they're all pretty shocked and disgusted by this. And yes, there were controversies and scandals during the World Cup, but on the whole, it was well received, wasn't it? And it was a sort of fantastic tournament. You were telling me earlier your son volunteered out there, and you know, people love their football. They feel really aggrieved when something like this happens, and it can't carry on. Things have to change.
But I also feel a bit aggrieved for, as you were saying, my son volunteered at Kansas City ground, and there were 65,000 volunteers. They had to be interviewed, and they got nothing. OK, they're volunteering, but he's done it before. Normally you get your accommodation paid, you get food and you get transport. This time they didn't get anything. So huge numbers of people who were helping that tournament be a success were actually paying for the privilege of working. And he was saying to me, because there's no public transport in the United States, he was having to pay a fortune for taxis to go to the stadium to work.
Even though those hydration breaks were sponsored for huge amounts of money.
Yeah, so they're making, I don't know, they made 10 billion, didn't they, I think, FIFA from the World Cup, and yet they couldn't even provide accommodation and transport to the volunteers.
I suppose it's a very small example, isn't it, of where people don't like being ripped off, especially when it comes to their favourite game, something which is so integral to so many people's lives.
Yes, I would just, in fairness to the way the World Cup was run, and obviously the fact your son had to work for free and actually pay for the privilege, I hope he at least got to see some of the games in return. But you know, he has made Infantino, that World Cup, I thought there are a number of improvements to it. I like the round of 32. I know people didn't like that extra round, but I thought it enabled teams to stay, smaller teams, smaller nations, to stay in the competition longer. I like the fact that you had much smaller sides like Cape Verde doing well and being included within Curaçao as well, being included within the World Cup. I thought that was, in many ways, I thought it was a great tournament. I thought it was one of the better World Cups. And I think, to be fair, that's down to FIFA and the way they decided to organise it. But I don't want to labour the point, but he does seem to have that slightly megalomaniac kind of approach to running the game. And I always thought he was slightly off when I saw that restaurant owner hugging, is it Salt Bay? Hugging Lionel Messi, Messi at the end of the World Cup final in 2022. I thought that was slightly on the pitch, and he'd obviously, I think there'd been photographs earlier of him eating at his restaurant. So it's no surprise. You say fans are shocked or disgusted, but I'm not sure they're very surprised with the way this turned out.
And I think
it's astonishing. It's, we had all the corruption under Sepp Blatter, and now you couldn't imagine that things could be worse, but now he seems to have made FIFA look even worse. It's been
a very fast-moving story, hasn't it? And we will see what the next day or two delivers. And, of course, a headline writer's dream as well. The Observer's devoted its entire front page to his woes. We'll be looking in more detail at the papers at 10:30. Own goal, it says quite simply. Now, Spain has accused several fellow EU states of a very selfish attitude over their reaction to the chaos caused when tens of thousands of people crossed from Morocco into the tiny Spanish enclave of Ceuta, resulting in more than 80 deaths. Spain says 53,000 of the 60,000 who crossed the border have now returned to Morocco. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said tonight not one had made it to mainland Spain or indeed anywhere else in the EU. Well, this evening, Spain's Guardia Civil posted this footage of its operation to install a 500-metre barrier in the sea to prevent a repeat of Thursday's events. And tonight, far-right demonstrators have gathered in the enclave. Our international correspondent, Alex Rossi, sent this report from there.
Yes, they helped us. They opened the border. Moroccan police and Moroccan soldiers let everyone in.
The number of migrants that crossed in the space of just a few hours is simply staggering. Local authorities say around 60,000. The city here was overwhelmed. Now, since we've been here in the last 20 or 30 minutes, we've witnessed many of them now leaving. The city centre is over there, And you can see the border with Morocco over there, where they are returning.
We spoke to dozens of migrants as they were escorted back by the Spanish military. Many described what appeared to be a coordinated opening of the border. These migrants told us Moroccan police simply waved them through. Whether these scenes were organised or simply exploited remains disputed. But these images have reverberated across Europe, reigniting arguments over whether the EU can defend its external borders. Across Ceuta, soldiers now stand guard. Their presence is designed to send a clear message. The Spanish state remains in control. Spain's government has also stressed Morocco is a reliable partner.
This has happened because of the actions of mafias, human traffickers, and people who take advantage of vulnerable people. Therefore, Spain, within the EU, is perfectly aligned and in the forefront of the fight against illegal movement.
These pictures show residents cheering as migrants were moved back towards the border. Most of those who crossed have now returned to Morocco, but some remain determined to reach mainland Spain, convinced the journey is worth the risk.
We thought we would leave Morocco and find a way to live. If we stay in Morocco, we earn very little money. It's almost nothing, you know. We thought we would try our luck, but it wasn't destined. Hopefully another time, God willing. But for those going to Ceuta or another place, honestly, my brothers, it's really tough. Everyone there got stopped and arrested. They don't want to sell groceries to anyone of those arriving.
All along the beaches here are people's personal possessions. Shoes, not even pairs of shoes, discarded clothing, and inflatables that people would have used for the crossing. And I suppose this also tells a story of the chaos and the human cost.
Along the shoreline where Europe meets Africa, police divers continue searching the water for those who never made it ashore. Spain has promised to reinforce this border, but as long as there is the hope of a better life, migrants will keep attempting to cross. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Ceuta.
A remarkable footage. Let's talk a bit more about this. Theo, most of these people who have made the crossing are now back in Morocco, we're told. And I guess the authorities will be trying to work out what it was that motivated so many people so quickly to all make this move.
That's absolutely key as to how you ended up with the pictures that we saw of tens of thousands, mostly men, suddenly rushing, storming the border, not just through the gates, but also swimming around the what previously existed to try and stop them, you know, via the sea. And as you saw in your pictures in your report there, they've now put in a barrier. But that's absolutely critical to understanding exactly how Spain has found itself in this situation. I also think what's also almost more interesting is the reaction to this story. This is the way that I think it's been framed in some parts of the media is that this is part of mainland Europe, that this is an invasion of mainland Europe. It's not. It's a tiny enclave on the north coast of Africa. Funnily enough, I've been there many, many years ago. It's not very interesting. That is used by Spain as a foothold into the continent of Africa for trade going back, you know, hundreds of years. And the ocean, you know, the Mediterranean Sea existed already that would act as a natural border to prevent those individuals coming into mainland Europe. But already we've seen Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish Prime Minister, criticising his EU counterparts as for being selfish, because we've seen both Italy and France introduce stricter border controls, calls for Spain to be removed from the Schengen area. And for those who, you know, seek to weaken the strength of the European Union, this is, of course, a feather in their cap, and if you end up with disagreements between France, Spain, you know, major players in the European Union, then it will only weaken the resolve.
While we're chatting, let's just show you some footage that's coming to us tonight. Far-right demonstrators and counter-protesters have been gathering in the enclave this evening. You can see them there, around 24 far-right activists, accompanied by large numbers of police, appear to be outnumbered by counter-protesters. But Christine, it does sort of reignite, doesn't it, arguments about how well the EU can control its borders, as Theo was suggesting.
I mean, it's reminding me, and the picture on the front of the Mail tonight also reminds me of covering the migrant crisis in 2015, when you had huge numbers of people coming into Europe across land, but coming overseas from Turkey into Greece. And there was that famous photograph of Aylan Kurdi, the boy that...
yes, I remember. That was so sad, wasn't it?
Drowned. But I can see why the Spanish government is a bit aggrieved, because if you look at the figures, more migrants have come into Italy and Greece over the last year than Spain. So to criticise them for letting people in. But I have to say, the footage was astonishing. But also, I heard on the radio recording of all the people coming, and the sound of it was amazing, almost more astonishing than the pictures, actually.
Yeah, it's remarkable. We'll talk a bit more about this later in the programme. That front page you were referring to, showing a Spanish soldier and two of the migrants just exhausted on the beach there. Now, Andy Burnham was back in Manchester today for the second time since he became Prime Minister 12 days ago. This time it was to congratulate Bev Craig, who held off a challenge from Reform UK to succeed him as Mayor of Greater Manchester. Mr Burnham said he'd already put plans in motion to devolve greater powers to the region.
Through devolution, taking control of the things that affect people's daily lives, such as housing, building more homes that people can truly afford. The buses, yes, I have to mention the buses. I can't believe we might actually have a mayor of Greater Manchester that's going to do more on buses than I did, but still, I'm going to have to accept it, aren't I?
Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, has hot-footed it back from Manchester. He's in Westminster for us tonight. John, Bev Craig was always expected to win this, wasn't she? Well, what are your key takeaways from the election?
Well, there are three, really. First of all, there's a Burnham bounce, certainly. Labour are doing better, not just in opinion polls, but at the ballot box as well. OK, she didn't get over the line in the first ballot. 47%, you need 50, whereas Andy Burnham did in 3 elections. But she was well ahead of Reform, who were on 22%, the Greens on 12%, and the... interestingly, Restore Britain, that's Rupert Lowe's party, 9%, Tories only 8%. Well, you heard the Prime Minister talking there about the cost of living. I spoke to Bev Craig after those speeches, and I asked her about the Prime Minister's pledge to hand more money back to mayors. What was she going to spend it on, I said.
First of all, it's really exciting that a Prime Minister 2 weeks into office is devolving power, control and money out of Westminster and putting it into our hands. You know, we've been arguing for this for a long time in Greater Manchester, so it's great to see it happen. Be that 16 to 19 skills, be that helping grow the economy to create jobs. You know, and for me, the plan that I've got for Greater Manchester will be focusing on our priorities, and any new money, power, control that we get goes on those priorities. Jobs for everyone, building the homes we can afford, and investing into vibrant town centres to make life better.
Well, tonight, the Prime Minister is pledging again to help people with the cost of living. So is the Chancellor, John Healey, as well. An interview in the Sunday Mirror, the Prime Minister's saying that rail fares are too high, outrageously so. That's something that's in my sights. He says that the electricity bill cuts so far are just a short-term measure. Let's see where we can go with that. Water's an issue, he says. The public pay high bills. They don't see money going into infrastructure. That's another area that needs reform. The Chancellor, writing in the Sunday Telegraph, John Healey, is worried about consumers being ripped off because of price rises due to the Iran war. I won't allow supermarkets to rip you off, he says. He says we'll be watching closely for any suggestions that customers are being taken for a ride at the pump or at the till. And he says the companies have been positive so far. But I want to be blunt in reassuring the public. Our regulators have the powers to clamp down on it if it happens. So back to that cost of living issue again, which Mr Burnham says is his top priority.
OK, John in Westminster, thank you very much. Theo, turnout was low, wasn't it? Which I was quite surprised at. 25%, I think. But nonetheless, you know, certainly a burn and bounce for Labour.
It is a burn and bounce. And if you think back to when Keir Starmer was trying to block Andy Burnham coming into Parliament, you know, the main argument was, well, we don't want to have a mayoral by-election because we might end up losing it. And Bev Craig has done anything but. She won, you know, 47% first time in the first round. Of course, it goes to second preferences at that point. And I think, you know, listening to Andy Burnham, you were covering it earlier on Sky News. We were watching your coverage from there, and then of course listening to John's interview there. I think there's a real sort of a feel-good factor in the Labour Party right now, and he has hit, you know, to use that cliche, he's hit the ground running. He's got that. He's put the mojo back in amongst Labour MPs, and that will only, of course, and he has ruled it out, but that will only, of course, raise speculation as we head into the autumn about whether he might go for an early election, especially as we see Nigel Farage and Reform floundering. And
do you think that might happen?
Well, he's ruled it out, and you could make the argument, of course, that he's got 3 years, and you would expect that why trade 3 years necessarily, take it risk of trying to get it to 5, but it would certainly be his own mandate, and MPs in the Labour Party would have to turn around and say, well, OK, you took over with a by-election and there wasn't a leadership contest, but this belongs to you now, so it would increase his power. And of course, the danger is that we will only see with the conflict in the Middle East, you know, living standards get worse over the next few years, and that shine start to rub off his expensive clothes.
Yeah. It's been a busy almost 2 weeks, hasn't it, for the new Prime Minister? How do you think he's fared? We've heard a lot of policies. We haven't had a huge amount of detail.
So I've been out of the country the last 2 weeks, but every time I go onto my Facebook, I seem to see him making another video about his favourite bar snacks or his favourite albums or what he thinks about the World Cup. And so it does make me wonder how he has time to do all of these things he's announcing every day. But I don't know. I mean, look, I felt like I don't want yet another Prime Minister that we didn't actually vote for, but it is quite... There is something nice in this rather kind of desperate situation in the world at the moment. To see someone who seems to be really enjoying doing the job and enthusiastic about things.
That'll soon rub off.
Well,
yeah, let's see if he's still smiling in 6 months' time. OK, thank you both very much for the moment. We're going to take a break. Coming up next, we'll take a first look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. There have been a lot of...
jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Watching the wrap on Sky News, let's see what's making the front pages of Sunday's papers, beginning with The Observer, leading with the headline, Own Goal, reacting to the fallout from the FIFA president's controversial proposal to sell stakes in the World Cup to private investors. The Mail on Sunday features a special dispatch from Ceuta, where tensions are mounting following the arrival of a wave of migrants. The front page of the Sunday Mirror reports that Andy Burnham has promised readers that tackling the cost of living is his top priority, pledging that he will help families in need. Bringing on the Sunday Times next, claiming Nigel Farage struck a secret deal to return as Reform UK leader months before the 2024 general election. Here's your Sunday Telegraph, leading with Chancellor John Healey's pledge to not allow supermarkets to rip you off, as he warns of more cost of living pain due to the war in Iran. The Sunday Express claims Andy Burnham will punish people with his reforms of social care, with the headline, fears families will be hit by £76,000 tax on death. The Star reveals that Vikram Digwar's mum, who was jailed for hiding the weapon her son used to murder Henry Novak, has been moved to a wing housing Britain's most dangerous women. While the Sunday People features an interview with a friend of the so-called Frankenstein killer, Alan Grimson, who fears there could be many more victims. And the Sun leads with a splash on the romantic life of one of television's gladiators. Christina and Theo still with us to discuss all of that, starting with Infantino. Theo, The Observer saying game over, question mark, and that really is the question, isn't it? When rather than if, probably, he's going to leave his job.
Yes, and they've decided to use a rather apt picture of him Infantino holding the World Cup with Donald Trump during the final ceremonies. They presented it to Spain, who, of course, with the rest of UEFA, would have walked out of the next World Cup, along with England and other European nations, had this plan gone ahead. But he's backed down, and now the questions are about whether Infantino can survive in this job. Of course, many would like to see the back of him, because that would be seen as the safest way of ensuring that we don't end up with another debacle like this in a few months or a few years' time.
Yeah, I suppose the key problem here, Christina, aside from his history and things that he's done in the past, is that he brought this plan in, but there was no discussion. He didn't go through it with anybody. In fact, many of the senior people at FIFA only learnt about it from the media.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to understand what his plan was, how this was supposed to happen. It was done in such secrecy that, as you say, these two senior FIFA people who have now quit said that they had no idea. And so how he was expecting to launch this, and also the way he sort of tried to force countries to sign up to it by saying that giving them this short deadline, and they're not basically bribing them, offering them a lot of money. So it really is the story of the week. And I'm afraid that ever since watching, I was at a conference in Qatar, and I switched on the TV, I guess it was in December, and it was just as he was presenting Trump with the Peace Prize. And so I happened to watch him do that live, and it just seemed such an astonishing thing to do. It was very hard to really feel that he had any credibility after that. But I'm just not so sure he'll go so easily.
Yeah, front page of The Sun, Theo, Infantino is world pariah, is their headline. I think you need, is it 20% in order to call for a vote of no confidence?
Yeah, so it won't be easy to get rid of Infantino. And I think it's also just worth reflecting on the fact that the reason that we have football confederations that organise World Cup competitions like this, just like we have the International Olympic Committee that organises the World Cup, the Olympics, of course, is because integrity in sport matters. It's what creates jeopardy. It's why fans go to matches. If you believe in a game, if you believe in the game itself, and if it's the danger, I think, is that if it's suddenly sold off to some sort of private consortium, that it goes behind the closed doors of a private company and investors that can manipulate the situation without any safeguards or any scrutiny or accountability.
Run by someone who happened to be the brother of his son-in-law.
Then of course it will tear the game apart. I remember many years ago, I found myself with some friends in Bulgaria, and we were playing Football Manager. And I asked him, why did he play with the English teams? Why didn't he support the Bulgarian teams? And he turned around to me and he said, I support, I was trying to tell him about the benefits of English players, but he said he supported them because he couldn't believe in the Bulgarian game. It was rife with corruption and mafia involvement. And that's why he didn't support a Bulgarian team. The reason he wanted it, and that's why I think the Premier League is such a fantastic export for this country. And I think there's a real danger if this had gone ahead, we'd end up in the same situation with international football.
Yeah, good point. OK, listen, we're going to move on to the front of the Sunday Telegraph. John Healey saying, I will not allow supermarkets, Christina, to rip you off. And this is all as a result of prices going up because of the ongoing Iran war.
Yeah, I mean, this is no one really knows how this is all going to end, this disastrous war in Iran, which is just going on and on. And, of course, it has led to oil prices going up because Iran now controlling the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of world shipping goes, and it's hard to see how that's going to change. I'm not quite sure. It's all very well John Healey saying he's not going to allow petrol stations and supermarkets to put up prices too much, but quite how they're going to do that.
Yeah, we will find out, I guess. I mean, it leads us on to the front of the Mirror, Theo. PM's vow to Mirror readers, I'll help families in need. John Healey making some pretty downbeat comments, which, of course, was one of the criticisms of the Keir Starmer administration, wasn't it? You know, when they came in and were saying that things were going to get harder before they got better.
Yes, I think I agree with that. I think there's always a danger, isn't there, that you sort of downplay and then everybody feels miserable and then you sap consumer confidence and the like. And that was a strategy that I didn't think played particularly well for Rachel Reeves or indeed Keir Starmer. But I think the reality of the situation, as you were saying, Christina, is that we're looking at a prolonged conflict in the Middle East. The Bank of England, 6 months ago, was potentially going to reduce interest rates further. Now we're talking about whether interest rates are going to have to go up again in order to deal with inflationary pressures. And I think that they are trying to find, trying to level with the British public. There's been a lot of positivity we've just talked about, but of course this is going to have to be paid for in an upcoming budget. And one of the things that has, though, impressed me, I think, both about Burnham and John Healey, is that they do have, when it comes to this, the cost of living, and it always comes back to the cost of living, this more of a laser-like focus on dealing with this particular issue, because they know that it always comes back to the economy. And if people feel better off, then that will have positive effects for the Labour government and the Labour Party at the ballot box.
It's just not clear where the money's going to come from to pay for this.
Of course.
Well, which leads us nicely on to the next story. This is going very well, the flow of front pages. The Sunday Express fears families will be hit by £76,000 tax on death. We've heard a lot about social care reforms, and as we were saying before, and you've just alluded to as well, lots of promises over the last 12 days or so from the Prime Minister, but little detail on where the money is going to come from. And one of the things that has been discussed is this so-called death tax.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is a huge issue, and that's something that affects pretty much all of us, because we're either going to have parents that we have to help pay for, or we ourselves will be in this situation. And the money isn't there. We've got an ageing population. You look at hospices, they're almost entirely dependent on donations. They get almost nothing from the government for their needs, and so they then can't provide the palliative care that many people need. So something has to be done, and people have been talking about this and saying something has to be done for a long while, but perhaps Andy Burnham, being in this situation himself with his father suffering sadly from dementia, may perhaps be the person that actually will do something about it. And I think, the fact is we are going to have to somehow pay for it.
Yeah, it would be a flat 10%, wouldn't it, on all estates? And
but it's a much fairer way of doing it.
Yeah.
It's a much fairer way of doing it
than
just to tax everybody's estate at 10%. So if the alternative is to, to tax care itself, think back to Theresa May's plan back in 2017, where nothing had changed, but you would end up having to sell your home in order to pay for your care, and it becomes a complete lottery as to whether you have dementia, and I think this is 1 in 14 people over 80, 65 are affected by it. So it's and if you are affected, you can run bills running into tens of thousands of pounds. This is a much way of saying spreading the risk amongst the population to say that everybody pays 10% on your inheritance, an additional 10% on your inheritance. You can change the thresholds as well. That would actually mean that you can lose a loved one without having had necessarily incurred the costs of long-term care in old age, but you still end up contributing towards the care of others. It's a much more equitable
and just
way
really
of doing
briefly, really quickly, the Prime Minister's obviously talked about this before he was Prime Minister, thinking it was a good idea. He's been very coy since. Do you think it will come in?
I think they're going to have to do something, as you're saying. They've got to pay for it, right? And they've got to find the money, and this is one way of doing it.
OK. Christina, let's talk about your piece in the Sunday Times. You've just been to Israel. Tell us what you discovered and what you've written about today.
Yeah, so I spent a week on the West Bank first, which was really horrific, seeing now how many settlers are moving into the area. Almost every Palestinian village you go into now has settlers, including, I went to one house where there was actually settlers had moved between the house and its outdoor bathroom, so the people couldn't use their own bathroom. But this week, and what I've written about for tomorrow's paper, I went down to the Gaza envelope, as it's called, the border with Gaza, and there's this most bizarre viewpoint where people go, and it's become a tourist attraction. It's a really weirdest tourist attraction I've ever seen, where people pay 5 shekels to be able to use these binoculars to look at the ruins of Gaza. You're literally looking at all the rubble of the destruction. I mean, more than 80% of the buildings and houses of Gaza have been destroyed, and people are going to look at it. And I'm sorry to say, but most of the people going there are going there to sort of rejoice in look. And the first woman that I met there, the first Israeli woman, said to me she was disappointed that it wasn't more destroyed. And you also see smoke, and you can see that attacks are still going on, even though this peace agreement was signed, Trump's peace agreement in October. And so people are still being killed almost daily. Now, this week, we suddenly, unexpectedly really, had this announcement from Trump on social media, as is his wont, to say that he's now got another deal which will be for the disarmament of Hamas and for Israeli troops to withdraw.
This is the deal that Hamas have said that they will disarm heavy weaponry.
Nothing
and Israel hasn't commented.
And Israel is just, so I was reporting on that too, is just going into an election campaign. So the last thing that Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, wants is to be withdrawing troops from Gaza, because that's not popular within Israel. It would be actually electoral suicide, I think, for him to have to do that at this time. And it's very interesting because, he's the great survivor. He's been 18 years in power. And now there's this general who was the top general, was his top general, who quit 2 years ago and is now running against him and is leading in the polls or tying, depending which poll you look at. And so, maybe we're going to see a big change in Israel's politics.
Yeah, it sounds like a fascinating trip. And a final thought on that from you, Theo. We've only got 30 seconds.
Well, I was just going to ask whether you thought, and I noticed in you're saying about a call for an October the 7th inquiry, what you think, Christina, how he's pitching it, this general is pitching it in terms of the backlash from what happened on October the 7th.
Yeah, because Netanyahu has never, this is the biggest national security breakdown in Israel's history, and he has not had an inquiry. So that's led to people asking a lot of questions.
Because he was blamed for it for putting too many troops in the north.
Yeah, OK, you can read more in tomorrow's Sunday Times from Christina. Fascinating article. Thank you both for the moment. Coming up, we have got the highlights for you from the Scottish Premiership, including a dramatic ending between Aberdeen and Hearts. Don't go away.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
First Minister, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you. How are you feeling?
Looking forward to getting into the parliamentary chamber.
Are you any further forward to making a decision?
No, it's an important day today.
All of the claims were in line with my parliamentary duties, so I'm making that clear to you, Conor.
He was a Scot through and through.
He was a very good politician.
Alex Salmond was controversial, he was a disruptor, but above all, he was respected.
Will you resign if you lose this week?
Again, I'm not planning to, of course, lose the vote of no confidence. I'm planning to win that vote of no confidence.
His face said it all.
My intention to stand down as party leader.
This is now a storm with deadly consequences. How are they feeling?
They're a bit scared at the minute. We've been told to evacuate.
How are you feeling?
Devastated.
Hundreds of homes were wiped out by flooding. I'm Conor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent.
It was probably the darkest time in my life.
Scott is 5 years sober after a cocaine addiction left him close to death.
Scotland has a shameful record. Worse than England, the worst in Europe. Why not just say you failed? Because then you might get more respect from families who've lost loved ones.
This is where one of the UK's most prolific rapists thought he'd got away with murder.
Sky News can reveal that former sex workers had told police he was sexually violent.
My Emma.
Free wherever you get your news.
It's over, isn't it?
The Americans say he is Rossi, a fraudster.
This has been one of the most bizarre cases ever heard in a courtroom in this country.
A dangerous murderer.
Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Andrew Ennis after this?
She said she can forgive him, but as long as he's behind bars.
By doing the right thing, it's destroyed your life.
They terrorised me. They intimidated me.
I'm so grateful.
Sky News, the full story first.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live.
They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Hello again. Let's get the latest sport now with Paul.
Right, here we are. First day back, I suppose. It kind of feels like, doesn't it? How is the feeling? Because everything feels quite new around here.
Now, of course, first day of pre-season with the full squad outside on the pitch today. And the first team meeting talking about our season ambition and who we want to be. It's been a great day, and of course I'm very excited, yeah.
How does it feel? I mean, it feels odd coming here. I haven't been shouted at by Katie McCabe or given a big hug by Beth Mead. There is a different feeling here today.
Yeah, you'll get them at some point, just not around Arsenal. Yeah, of course, they are legends of the club on what they've done for Arsenal, and for me it was a pleasure working with them as well. In both of them there's so much football intelligence, and learned from them, and I think Katie with her leadership, her vocality on the pitch, same with Beth, very energetic, vocal on the pitch. Of course we'll miss that, but yeah, it's a new season and we have a lot of great players coming in, and there will be new dynamics, and we have a lot of leadership in the squad as it stands, and then it's always interesting in the group dynamics. How are these different roles going to be filled with the squad that we have right now? But it looks really, really good.
The decision to sort of transform the squad, to move on from certain players, to kind of maybe get a bit younger, was taken some months ago. Was there any kind of nerves about sort of the process whilst you were going through it, especially at the end of the season when your team was playing well?
Yeah. Nerves, I don't know what word I would use, but you're always, because it's decisions for the player, for the team, for the club, and you want to make sure that for all parties involved the decisions are right. So of course there's been a lot of thinking going into these decisions. If I would say it's made me nervous, I don't think so. But yeah, I'm just really happy with Beth and Katie, the way they've ended their Arsenal time, because I think they've been playing on a really high level and have been really important for us. Likewise for Laia Codina, Vic Belova. Manuela was, of course, unfortunately out with an injury, but all these players hopefully feel like the end of their Arsenal time has been positive.
But you haven't, lots of clubs, I suppose, when they were sort of going out and starting a new structure, would have gone out and probably signed a load of young players, but you've signed quite a few players at their peak, or certainly sort of hoping to be at their peak. Was that a conscious decision?
Yeah, so of course there's a lot of different factors that we look at when we go and recruit and build a team that we think can be most successful for us. They need to be good fits for us. So how I see the game growing, athleticism I think is really important because the game becomes faster. So explosive actions, you have to be able to deliver them over 90 minutes. So definitely something we've looked at. You have to be able to play the Arsenal way, and that's dominating the ball, so that's important qualities. Then about the group dynamics, what kind of personalities and characters do we bring into the group? What do we need? How are things going to fit together? So yeah, there's been a lot of work and there's a lot of factors that play in. But yeah, we also look at age is one of them. What's the best balance for us? But it's not something that we focus on, because if you look at another example, Kim Little, for example, she's 35, 36, and she's just performing at such a high level. So it is something we look at, and it's important for the here and now and for the future to do the right things. But yeah, I'm really happy that we recruited players in their peak ages, peak times of their careers, and they want to do that and be at their peaks at Arsenal. So I'm so happy they chose us and we chose them as well. And then
Let's take a look now at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
So next week will bring some much needed rain, but not all droughted areas will see it. Most places will have a fine start tomorrow, but the southwest of Ireland can expect rain. It's going to be a bit chilly in some rural spots with a grass frost possible. Now, Britain will stay largely dry throughout the morning with plenty of sunshine, but Scotland will have the odd shower. The Northern Isles look most at risk. Elsewhere, it will be quite cloudy with patchy rain moving across Ireland, but Donegal will be dry. It'll be mostly warmer than it has been today. Those are your temperatures, as you can see, for around noon. Clouds going to build across more of the north and west during the afternoon with a little rain over Northern Ireland and Wales. Elsewhere, there'll be little change. And on to Monday, England and Wales look mainly fine and very warm. Hot in the southeast, but thundery showers are possible later. Elsewhere, it's going to be cooler and cloudier with more general rain, most belonged over Scotland. Tuesday, showers or longer spells of rain.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Coming up at 11, can the FIFA president Gianni Infantino survive the pressure on him as UEFA calls for him to step down?